Okay, I'm going to talk about the relationship between government, the free market, and consumers, or we could even say voters or people in general. So there are basically two arguments. The first argument is kind of the big government argument. It says that the free market won't regulate itself, therefore we need a government to regulate the free market. The second argument is the small government argument. It says that basically the government will corrupt itself, and therefore we need to just allow the free market to regulate itself. Now, here's the thing. What actually regulates the government and what regulates the free market, what determines how well they regulate themselves, are the people, okay? The voters, the consumers. This is obviously true. It checks out, right? We understand that we are the ones who elect the politicians. We are the ones who buy the products that the free market sells us. So in reality, again, we don't need government regulation. We don't need free market regulation. We need to regulate our own standards. And what we can say is that the standards of the average consumer, the average voter, is going to determine the standards of the government institutions and the free market institutions. So, again, to provide an example of that, let's look at the supplement industry. Okay, the FDA doesn't regulate supplements. Okay, in the way they regulate big pharma, right? So, what that means is the government, the FDA, will not look at a supplement before it's on the market, unless there's a reason to. So if a supplement kills a bunch of people, the FDA will look into it. But if they don't, the FDA isn't going to look into it. And what that means is that the free market is going to offer the entire spectrum of quality of any given supplement. So to provide an example, this example is just one that I was recently looking into, is protein powder. Okay, I buy protein powder, so I know it a little better than most. But just think about protein powder. Okay, if you have a free market that demands a certain quality, an average quality, we'll take the average quality demand. The free market is going to serve predominantly that average market. So if the average consumer does not demand high quality, the average company that produces protein powder is not going to be high quality. On the other hand, if 10% of the consumers demand high quality, then you're going to get about 10% of the free market who serves that high quality protein powder. On the other hand, if you have 10% who demand who are willing to purchase that low quality protein powder, the free market will serve them as well. This concept also applies to the government institutions. Again, if you have 10% of voters who demand the best politicians, then the best politicians are only going to get 10% of the vote. Likewise, if you have 10% of the of voters who who don't care, and perhaps just abstain from voting, then it's going to pull the average quality of your average politician, the quality of your average politician downward. Again, the government institutions and the free market institutions reflect the average standards of the voter and the consumers, right? This is a phenomenon that you have to understand, because it determines how well your government works for you. You can point the finger at the government for not regulating things. You can point the finger at the free market for not regulating things. At the end of the day, it's actually your everyday working class citizen who is failing to regulate things. If you are not happy with the quality of the government institutions, the free market institutions, it's because your average consumer, your average voter, probably standing right next to you, is not up to the standard, does not have the same standards that you do. So they're voting for different politicians. They're voting with their wallet in the store by buying lower quality food, lower quality supplements, for example, or lower quality products in general. So this phenomenon is very important to understand, because you can point the finger at the institutions, the free market, government, all you want. You can demand more regulation, but in order to get that regulation, in order to get the higher quality products, you have to raise the standards of the average consumer. So how do you do that? That's a harder question to answer. That requires, first of all, it requires education, but it requires people have higher standards. How do you do that? Well, you have to get them to care more. You have to get them to care about their health. You have to get them to care about the quality of the products they buy. And when you do that, you kind of run into a barrier, right? You run into an economic problem where all the people who perhaps want to buy organic grass-fed beef or organic vegetables, they can't necessarily afford them. So what do? Well, they buy the cheaper quality stuff and they drag the average quality of the free market downward. And then that leaves that 10% of the people who can afford to buy organic vegetables. It leaves them kind of, those economies don't develop on the same scale, and those quality vegetables, that organic food is more expensive. We know how economies of scale work. So if you purchase the organic vegetables and that market grows, basically the markets will become more efficient, and the supply will increase, and the average price of those products will come down, right? That's why we have cell phones that are, they're pretty good at what they do, right? And they're not necessarily cheap, but they're getting cheaper, right? The quality of your average iPhone in 2015 that cost $600 is now about $100 phone, right? From lower end phone. It's not the flagship today, but it's much cheaper now. That's the point here, is that I think we have people prioritizing the wrong things. You'll have people who perhaps can't afford to buy the organic vegetables and the organic grass-fed beef, the organic food, but they're buying the flagship smartphone. They're paying for a new car lease every couple of years. They have all of these luxury material items, but they're not taking care of their health. They're prioritizing the wrong products in the market. Again, you basically have people who are pushing the production of technology to the top, material goods. They're pushing the high end of that market up, but they're not pushing the high end of the market up of the food they eat, okay? And or the information that they take in, perhaps. They're watching CNN and Fox News instead of independent media that will tell you both sides, right? This is, again, there is an economic barrier here that I pointed out, okay? There are people who perhaps can't afford that flagship smartphone or the organic vegetables. And that causes a problem, because what that does is it feeds the lower quality markets. It feeds, and we could apply that same concept to the government institutions. There are people who perhaps are afraid to vote for a third party because they're afraid of Donald Trump. So they vote for Joe Biden. They settle for the lesser of two evils to avoid the greater evil. When in reality, the reason they're doing that is because they fear the greater evil. It's not, and in doing so, they're convinced by the polls they watch, the low quality information in the mainstream media, that voting for a third party is a waste, right? This phenomenon occurs, again, all over the place. We're basically creating lower standards for ourselves, and we're blaming somebody else for it because we refuse to demand higher standards. We refuse to contribute to the markets and to vote for the politicians who demand those higher standards. So you can keep buying the junk food, you can keep buying the processed food, you can keep voting for the lesser of two evils. Where's that going to get you in the long term? Okay, in the long term, it's going to get you more of the same. It's not going to change anything meaningfully. So my advice is, do what you can to really push your health forward. Buy the organic vegetables, buy the organic food, plant a garden in your backyard, stop eating the fast food, cook at home. Stop eating if the food label has 100 ingredients, you probably shouldn't be eating it. It's going to basically strip all the nutrients out of the food. You're going to get hungry, you're going to overeat, you're going to get obese, you're going to run into other health problems that cost you more money, and that contributes to the economic problem and creates a vicious cycle. Or you could just prioritize the food that goes in your mouth above everything else, and kind of throw the material luxuries aside. Drive the old beater, walk a little more to work if you can do that. Ride a bike to work. Again, plant a garden. You have to do the hard things to get the good things in the long run. If you keep sacrificing if you keep buying the unhealthy food, you're going to contribute to the market that, again, reflects the standards of the average consumer. If you keep electing the politicians, if you keep electing the lesser of two evils, you're going to contribute to the government institutions you're going to contribute to the average standards of those government institutions. You're going to pull the average standards downward. You have to kind of run uphill a little bit. Okay, I think Jordan Peterson said something along those lines. We're going to have to run uphill if we want to fix the problems we have. It means you're going to have to stop pointing the finger at other people. You're going to have to do what you can yourself. Now, I'm a firm believer in the concept that the men who hold high places must be the ones who start to mold a new reality closer to the heart. Okay, that's a Rush quote from the song Closer to the Heart. What that means is that if you can afford the organic vegetables, buy them so that you contribute to those economies of scale. If you can afford to vote for this, if you can convince yourself to vote for those third parties, do it. What that'll do is it will increase the capacity. It will increase the standards of those government and free market institutions over time, and it will pay back in spades to your health over time. And that's what we have to understand. It's that, again, if you are in a high place, if you can afford to contribute to those markets that sell more expensive food, do so in order to bring the price down over time so that more people can afford that food. And I talk about the government, and another example is the food here. The food really is important. It's the food, your exercise, the things you put in your body, the supplements. Those are important because that creates who you are. It really does. The information too. It creates who you are. The information you take in is all you are as a person in this reality. If you put high quality information into your brain, into your eyes, your ears, if you breathe in high quality air, and if you get rid of that polluted air from your environment, you're going to feel better. You're going to improve the function of your body, and your body will give you pathways to improve the average standards of the free market and the government. You have to unlock them, almost. It's like a little game, sort of. You put good in, and your body will find ways to put more good out. Okay, and again, if you are struggling to purchase, to pay rent, you're struggling to buy food, it might be hard to buy organic food, right? It might be hard to convince yourself to vote for that third party. But I encourage you to think more long term, because what you're really doing is you're dragging the standard down over time of the government institutions and the free market institutions, and that's going to feed right back into you. We have to understand that it's the people who make up the government. It's the people who make up the free market. We control them. If we work together to direct them to a higher place, we go to a higher place with them. Okay, we have to have higher standards for ourselves, and when we do that, we will create the institutions that people control will have higher standards. And it's pretty simple. Again, you can argue for government regulation, or you can argue that free market regulation is the ideal way to do things. In reality, they're going to match each other. The regulations of the government are going to match the regulations of the free market. The average regulations of the government and the free market are going to match the average standards of the average consumer. So give that a little thought, okay? Think a little deeper, okay? Don't be so fast to point the finger because CNN tells you to, or because Fox News tells you to, or because some political commentator tells you to. It's us that have to change the way we behave. And when you do, it will create benevolent cycles that can help us get out of these vicious cycles. Thanks for watching.